couple of housekeeping items before we start. I do want to let you know that the webinar is being recorded, and so if you have some colleagues who weren't able to join us today, we are happy to send over the link after the webinar so you can share that with anybody who wasn't able to join us. If you have questions throughout the session, we do encourage you to use the Q&A box, and you can use that once we have the Q&A session at the end of the meeting. We do also have the chat option enabled, so some of you have already used that. So please feel free to leave any comments there, feedback, any resources that you want to share as we're going through the session today. And so like I said, we're excited to be sharing with you the Greater Houston Citizenship Dashboard, which is a new tool which is going to be publicly available, so anybody can go and log on today and look at it. There's two key things that we wanted to do with this dashboard, which is one, provide information about the eligible to naturalize community here in the Greater Houston region, and also share citizenship resources with community members who are ready to take the step to apply for their citizenship. And our speakers for today that I'll introduce now, and they'll talk a little bit with you in a few minutes. So I'm joined today with Ty Ville, who's a research scientist and a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Southern California Equity Research Institute. So the Equity Research Institute is the entity that actually collected the data that you'll see today that was used for the dashboard. And then David McClendon, who's a principal at January Advisors, the data science firm that actually developed the dashboard. So David will be providing a tour of the mapping tool today. And just quick overview of the agenda. I am actually going to start before we turn it over to our speakers, just to provide a really brief overview of Houston Endowment and our overall strategy to promote citizenship here in Houston. I'll turn it over to Ty afterwards to share a little bit more about the data that was used for this dashboard. And then, like I mentioned, David will give us a tour of the mapping tool and the resources that are available through the dashboard. And then we will leave some time for Q&A. So again, please feel free to leave your questions in the chat now or in the Q&A box, but also during the Q&A portion, we'll have some time to be able to answer your questions. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar, Houston Endowment is a private foundation that supports the greater Houston area. We've been around for over 86 years now, and we currently have 3 priority areas that you see on the screen. So one is really ensuring that all students in the greater Houston area have high quality pre-K through 12 education. We also ensure that we are supporting the arts and community green spaces in our region. And then we're promoting civic engagement to ensure that everybody in our community has a say in the decisions that impact their lives. And within our civic engagement work, we have a major goal to promote immigrant civic integration, with a focus right now really being citizenship and promoting citizenship throughout Greater Houston. Now, the reason we landed on citizenship is because we know that helping the people who are eligible to become citizens take that step and attain their citizenship is going to make a huge impact throughout our area. Citizenship, as many of you know, all of you are on the ground working to promote citizenship. You know that there are a number of individual rights and benefits that come with citizenship. We also know that citizenship allows people access to better jobs, to higher wages, to home ownership, to things that are really going to create a more prosperous community for all of us. And so we decided that we wanted to take a really big effort to promote citizenship in our region. And our ultimate goal right now is actually to make Houston the citizenship capital of the US and to have the highest number of people becoming citizens here in Greater Houston than any other metro area in the US. And we know that we can do it. Now, in developing our strategy, we knew that the first thing that we had to do was get really good, high quality data. So we've done this a few different ways. So one, we supported the Migration Policy Institute in updating their profile of Houston's immigrant community. And I'm really excited to share, so this is some breaking news. The MPI report was actually released this morning, so you can go and check that out. There's a really great section in the MPI report about the eligible to naturalize community in Houston. So please do check that out. We'll put the link in the chat. And then I think the report is also should be in your resources section here in the Zoom. Secondly, we knew that the University of Southern California already had a really amazing mapping tool, a national mapping tool that had demographic information about the eligible to naturalize, and then also had a measurement called the probability to naturalize. And that was important to us to be able to really inform our strategy, to inform how we focus on certain areas, where we want to put resources to help the most people become citizens. And so, for example, if we know that there are communities where there's a low probability to naturalize, we know that we need to make a more concerted effort. We need to put more resources in there to make sure that people, we're able to address all of the challenges that people are facing to naturalizing. And Ty will talk a little bit more about the USC data in a few minutes. We also worked directly with Ty to create some county level fact sheets that have really amazing information about the eligible to naturalize community here specifically in our region. And so you should also be able to see that document in your resources section. We are also happy to share that with you directly over email. And then finally, the USC data, like I said, is a national mapping tool. And so we knew that we wanted to have something that was Houston specific for our Houston partners, our Houston leaders, our greater Houston leaders, to be able to go in and really understand the eligible to naturalize community and understand the challenges they face and the opportunities for us to be able to help them get to that step where they're applying for citizenship and becoming naturalized citizens. And then beyond data, I did want to just quickly share this slide that shares a little bit more about kind of our broader strategy in terms of just expanding access. So expanding the network of organizations that are providing services for citizenship for those who are ready to apply, and also expanding the types of resources that are available to really be able to address those key challenges that we're seeing in the community. So, challenges like the financial cost of citizenship, or access to legal services, or access to citizenship prep classes and things like that. And so I'm happy to share a little bit more about that later, or happy to answer, any direct questions about that broader strategy. And so I do want to just go ahead and turn it over now to Ty to be able to share a little bit more background about the data for the eligible to naturalize community that USC has been able to collect, as well as talk in detail about the probability to naturalize that you'll see also noted in the dashboard. And so Ty, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Ghislaine. And of course, I wanted to give a shout out to the Houston Endowment in inviting me to present today, but also helping to support our efforts to update the data for our own maps as well. So my name is Ty Lei. I am with the Equity Research Institute at the University of Southern California. And before I jump into a little bit more about how we got to the probability to naturalize, I want to talk a little bit more about the Equity Research Institute and who we are and what we do. So we are based out of the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. A lot of our work is around making equity policy programs, interventions happen with data and analysis. So we work with a lot of different pillars as it relates to social justice and social equity. So a lot of our reports, our analysis, our programmatic and policy interventions revolve around different issues of racial justice, immigrant inclusion, environmental justice, economic inclusion, as well as power building, especially among minoritized, marginalized, and disempowered communities. Our director, Manuel Pastor, has a lot of work in this field as well, very well known in this work for equity and justice as well. So we first developed the eligible to naturalize maps as well as a data set in about, I believe, 2018. The reason why we began to really develop this and make this available to a lot of community partners and policymakers was there was this need to better understand what are the drivers and barriers to pathways to citizenship. We all understood that there was a lot of racial disparities when it came to naturalization rates. For example, in the United States, Latina Americans were much less likely to naturalize than other racial ethnic groups. And so we were diving into it a bit deeper to understand, well, what is the reason behind that? And so I'll talk about it in a couple of slides about what we found to be some of the main drivers and barriers to naturalization. But by disaggregating the reasons why people are naturalizing, but also what it might be driving it, it helped us to better prepare recommendations on what can strategies look like and how can organizations and municipalities allocate their resource in a way that's more effective and equitable to really meet the needs of immigrants and the diverse communities they live in. And so, as we all know, with naturalization and pathways to citizenship, it really offers a lot of strategies to really improve political participation and representation in a more equitable approach. When we think about citizenship, it comes with a lot of benefits, but also privilege. We think about not only the economic and social benefits of becoming a citizen in the United States, but oftentimes the political benefits of being able to vote, running for local office. And as Ghislaine mentioned, our map and our resource is at the national level. And for those who are interested, the bit.ly link is there as well for you to explore our map. Again, big shout out to the Houston Endowment for their support and helping us update this map and data as well. And you'll notice if you explore our map, we do offer also some of the data breakdown. Also, anytime you go over any of the geographic layers. So moving on to how we predict the probabilities to naturalize. And so based off of literature and prior research, a lot of scholars in the immigrant inclusion, immigrant integration discipline looked at many different pathways to citizenship and what oftentimes influence and shape people's one, decision, and two, ability to naturalize. And so we group it into three categories: individual, place-based, and family effects. And so individual and place-based variables and factors have been studied very in depth to understand what are those factors that are really driving and enabling and empowering people to naturalize. So when we look at the individual level, the factors that we oftentimes look at is English speaking proficiency, educational attainment, household income, race, ethnicity, gender, years eligible, employment status, and age. And so these are all factors that have some influence in shaping people's outcomes of naturalization. More recent research has been looking at place-based. So depending on the countries of origin, immigrants have different costs and benefits to naturalizing. And one of the main ones is dual citizenship. Oftentimes, if your country of origin does not allow dual citizenship, it becomes a bigger cost to the immigrant to naturalize because they would have to forfeit their citizenship of their country of origin. We also looked at where the immigrants are currently residing in the United States to think about also the political landscape and whether or not the political landscape influence or might push immigrants to naturalize more quickly or the opposite direction. And for our more recent research, we started focusing more on family effects. And when we think about the political landscape in the United States, family effects becomes a huge factor in immigrants' decision to naturalize. With the criminalization of undocumented immigrants in the United States and the increased enforcement, oftentimes what we've been seeing, what the data has been showing us, that those who are in mixed status families, even those who are eligible to naturalize and have are currently living with someone who's undocumented, they're much less likely to naturalize. And qualitative results are showing that a lot of this is because they're avoiding any contact with government officials or immigrant officials, just to make sure that their family is staying safe. And so with family effects as well, we were able to also extrapolate how those with who are currently living with somebody who's naturalized or married to somebody who's naturalized, that improves their odds of naturalization by a lot. And a lot of that is because of pooling resources and pooling knowledge and insider knowledge about navigating the complicated and complex naturalization process. And so in looking at those three different buckets, we apply it to a binomial logit model. And for those who are into statistical modeling, this is probably the slide for you. But with the binomial logit model, basically what we do is we take the data points from the American Community Survey, which is a 5% subsample of American households every year. And so the 5-year estimates increase the sample size, but makes it more accurate in terms of a representative sample of the United States population. So the binomial logit model, basically, we look at it where the outcome is a binary. Either you naturalize or you don't naturalize. And we look at those who recently naturalized versus those who are eligible to naturalize but still have not yet to do so. And then based off of the different factors in the previous slide, the individual characteristics, the family effects, as well as different fixed effects to have a higher predictive power of how place really predicts outcomes, we come up with a probability for each individual in the data set based off of these many different variables and characteristics that have been associated and linked with naturalization outcomes. One of the things that we do that's different from other research is that we also adjust for those who are unlikely undocumented based off of our own internal methodology. For a lot of these large data sets, and past research on naturalization, they don't account for the fact that some of the folks in the sample are likely to be undocumented. So even for these folks who are likely undocumented and have been in the United States for a long time and may in all other senses be eligible to naturalize, systematically they're unable to naturalize because of their documentation status. And so by not accounting for those, it adds a lot of noise to the statistical model. But all of that to say is we were able to narrow down to those who are likely, who are eligible to naturalize and those who have recently naturalized to see what are those characteristics that really do predict naturalization outcomes. And so once we estimated the different probabilities of naturalization for each individual, we aggregated them at different geographies. So on our map, we aggregated them at the state level, congressional district level, as well as the census designated public use microdata areas, or what is the acronym of PUMAs. And what David will be showing on the Houston Endowment map is geographies at the PUMA level as well. And so PUMA is a census designated area or non-overlapping areas with populations no fewer than 100,000. So oftentimes for more rural areas, they would have more geographically larger areas, just because we want to be able to have that statistical power to accurately estimate the different characteristics of the populations living in those geographies. So in large metropolitan areas like the greater Houston area, PUMAs are often associated also with neighborhoods. And you'll see here on the image that's provided by the Census Bureau where PUMA falls in. And so PUMA is a sub geography of states, just because in the United States, there are some counties with even less than 100,000 population. And so PUMA is used as a way, again, to provide an accurate estimation based off of a subsample. And so when looking at the naturalization map and the data, it really does offer a lot of resources for a lot of local community organizations as well as municipalities to better understand the eligible to naturalize population. As Ghislaine mentioned earlier, by really understanding these different communities where they reside, community organizations have a better idea. Community organizations and immigrant advocates have a better idea of how best to shape their strategies to be more culturally appropriate and better meet the needs of the communities. As an example, you might find that in certain Pumas or in certain neighborhoods, there's a much higher share of those who speak English not well or not at all. So one of the strategy could be, well, let's provide more accessible resources to English classes, just because one of the largest barriers to the naturalization process is the English exam, right? So being able to understand also where there's a higher share of those who have high probability of naturalization versus low probability of naturalization, organizations and advocates can better understand which communities may need just a nudge versus a more robust assistance to naturalize. And this is helps to become more equitable in terms of how resources can be allocated. And when we think about also the data that's provided in the map, you can also see the language other than English that is most spoken among eligible to naturalize immigrants, as well as the top countries of origin. And so this will help also organizations to prepare resource materials or communication in language accessible in languages that are more accessible to the communities that are being reached out to. And, this is extremely helpful also when thinking about how can we close the racial ethnic gap in terms of political representation, political participation, and then pathways to citizenship as well. And then, so just a few extra links for those who might be interested in the work that we do at the Equity Research Institute, including my email for those who want to have any additional questions for me. But two other main products I do want to highlight here that is also has a lot of wonderful information to help a lot of community organizations and a lot of community partners is the National Equity Atlas, as well as the California Immigrant Data Portal. For any of those who are working on the ground in California, the California Immigrant Data Portal is a great resource to better understand California's immigrant population, including the intersection of documentation status, as well as other indicators of inclusion as well. Okay, and so I'll just pause there and hand it back to Ghislaine if there are any questions I think we're taking at the end.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ty. That was such a helpful overview. And just thank you so much to you and the team at USC for, being able to provide this data publicly to community organizations across the country that can really use it to inform their local work, especially when there are limited resources often in a lot of communities. So it's really helpful to be able to know exactly how to target those resources in the best way to be able to reach the communities that need it. So definitely encourage everybody to look at the USC Equity Research Institute resources. Beyond just the eligible to naturalize map, they have some really amazing information about other strategies that have been used to support people through the naturalization process. So yes, if you do have questions for Ty, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A box, and then we'll have some time at the end as well. So I will turn it over now to David to be able to show the mapping tool, the dashboard, and take us through the map.
Great. Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and thanks, Ty, for that great overview. I really, most of it I knew, but I was really excited just to see you present it because, you guys really know what you're talking about, and we're excited to partner on this project to use such great data and be able to help visualize it for everyone on the call and other community stakeholders. So this is the citizenship dashboard of Greater Houston. And you can get to it. I think we have a link in there too at houston.citizenship.org. We'll take you to this page. But I want to walk through some of the main features of the page or of the site and show off some of the ways in which we use the data and augment it with some additional data around resources. So when you land on the page, we wanted to make it as language accessible as possible. So this roving panel here, this carousel, basically lets people know that you can use Google Translate here to translate the page to many different languages, because often that's a little hard for people to figure out. And then we also have 3 ways to enter the dashboard. We have a little greeting here, but also wanted to highlight that you can either explore the map, which I'm going to get to. If you want to look at a particular neighborhood or Puma area, you can go directly there. And then we also have a page that that focuses more around the citizenship resources and allows people to search for different resources. So if you're someone who's maybe not as interested in the data, but somebody who is looking for resources and who is them or themselves or one of their family members is eligible to naturalize, have some more resources there where people can figure out near them or virtual resources that are available. So I'm going to start with the exploring the map. And so this map, Ty, thank you for explaining Pumas. And you can see here some of the differences in sort of the geographic spread. So within Houston, we have relatively small Pumas because there's a highly concentrated population. So we can be more sure that these estimates are correct for this small level of geography. When we get out more to the more suburban and rural areas, they get a bit larger because people are more spread out. And so each one, wanting to have, where these Pumas are drawn, have to have about 100,000 people in each of them. So, when you land on this page, there's some options on the left-hand side that allow you to see not only the eligible to naturalize adults, but also helps you filter them for different subpopulations within that larger group. So first off, we have both the Puma data here, but also the U.S. congressional districts as well, which are even larger in these cases, but which could be useful if you're sitting down with the House rep, be able to talk and look at their particular district. That could be really useful. In most cases, in terms of planning, you want a smaller level of geography or more neighborhood level of geography. So with the Pumas. So you have the option to look at the total population of legal permanent residents or lawful permanent residents, but also look at them by age group, by education level, by race ethnic group, by level of English proficiency, as well as level of poverty. So for instance, if you wanted to look, if you were doing a program that was targeted more towards younger adults, being able to see where the lawful permanent residents, the eligible to naturalized population lives, is concentrated in terms just for 18 to 24-year-olds or for 25 to 34-year-olds, for instance. We have here this defaults to looking at the absolute number. So when you're hovering over this, being able to see what Ty and his team have estimated to be the number of eligible to naturalize 18 to 24-year-olds in that area. But also see them as sort of as a share of the population as well. And then we also have the option to see if you wanted to look just at those who have either a high, medium, or low probability. So if we wanted to go back here and see, okay, let's see those who have a high probability, where they're located around Houston, the map looks a bit different as compared to those when you look at who have a lower probability. We have also added a couple additional layers here if you wanted to be able to see, for instance, the county boundaries over top of these. If you're interested in a particular county, we also have school districts as well. So you can see what the map looks like for Houston Independent School District, for instance. We also have the Texas House and Senate districts as well. And then finally, we also have the option of on this page, being able to overlay the resources that AIR collected with the Houston Endowment over top to see where are their English language classes, legal services, and citizen test prep classes available here. Great. So one of the next things you can do here is as you're hovering over these and seeing the numbers, you can also click and get more information. Just still staying on the map page about this. about this place. So you see both the top place of origin, the top language spoken, as well as the race ethnic composition of the eligible to naturalized population. If you want a bit more information about this neighborhood, you can click on this and view in the neighborhood profile, which you can also get to by going over here on the top nav bar or going from the front page directly to here. And so this gives you a more in-depth view of this particular area. So you have a little bit of a mini map up here that shows you, just reminds you what you clicked on and what it looks like. The name, the sort of census given name for this area. And then it will tell you more about the number of eligible to naturalize adults, as well as those who have the number and share that have a low, medium, and high probability of naturalization. Below that, we've got even more detail for kind of the super data user here who would want to know, sort of dig in a little bit more into either education levels, so showing the education breakdown for the eligible to naturalized population in this area. If you wanted to look at it by age, as well as, so you can see in this area, there's a large share who are 35 to 54. In terms of education, there's a larger share who have a bachelor's degree or more. And then you can see how this different levels of education break down in terms of having a low, medium, and high probability of naturalization. You can also, if this data is useful to you, that you're looking at, and you want to be able to, you're looking at poverty and you want to be able to download some of this data, you can also view and see a table below here that has the actual data that's on these charts, and you can download this data with by clicking this button right here. And then at the bottom of the page, we also just have, for this particular area, the resources that we've collected in this area. So this is a quick list just to see what are the resources, phone number, and address associated with this. A more detailed view, though, of these resources can be viewed on the resource page, and this might be a page you want to send someone directly to help them find resources. So we have all the resources here listed in terms of English classes, citizenship test prep, and legal services. You can focus on one of these, for instance. Wanted to focus just on English language classes that you were looking for, and then also be able to search for different types of resources as well. And so this has both those that have English classes and there's some of the resources we have of English classes and citizenship test prep as well. I mean, you also be able to search for those for particular types of resources or terms mentioned if there's particular languages you're interested in. You can also select a particular zip code if you're interested in looking at a particular one. So, as well as if you zoom in on the map, it'll filter out those as well. And then for whatever view you have, you'll be able to see a list of resources that are in that map view. You'll be able to look at them, obviously, just by clicking on them. And you'll get information by the website and directions for this resource, which will take you to a Google Map link that'll allow you to put in your own address and get easy access to figure out the best way to get there. But then also we can, down here, have a list of all these resources that are currently on the view on the map. Have links out to these organizations as well as links out to their addresses. Has more information about the types of service provided, as well as if we have any information about the languages that are available, as well as some contact info. And then for all views, no matter where you are on the map, we're also going to list the virtual resources that are available as well. And you can search for these particular ones if there's an organization you're interested in looking at, for instance. So all those that have are hosted by Baker Ripley, for instance, will filter out there for virtual resources. And so this is a good way to direct people to this in particular, these resources in particular. And one of the things I wanted to mention here is that we have been, since we presented some of this first version of this map back in September, we've been getting some feedback from different stakeholders, and they're still implementing some of that feedback. For instance, one of the things we're doing right now is trying to make this a little bit a little bit less academic, a little more fun and user-friendly for the resource page. So we'll be rolling out some of those changes in the coming weeks. And then we also have a final page that has a brief, some links out to some of the methodology and explanations of the data sources that Ty mentioned. And I think one of the things we also talked about adding was this webinar, in fact, here as well, so people could, for future, be able to really get a nice explanation of what's going on in this map and a tour of all its different features. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over, stop sharing my screen, and take any questions you all might have.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. We do have some questions coming in. So one of the questions we had in the chat is, does the dashboard show which populations are not language proficient? So I think this gets to English language proficiency.
Yeah, so we do have one of the breakdowns you can look at on the map is English language proficiency, and seeing which ones. I believe the options are those that are not don't speak English well at all, not well, and English only. There's different options there.
And then we had another question in the chat about, I think this had to do with the different boundaries, and if I think you had it at the county level, or is there? Paula's asking about county precincts.
In terms of voting precincts, I would imagine. I think one of the challenges there is that voting precincts are very small, and so the way that the data, the level of geography that Ty is able to aggregate some of this data would encompass, in some cases, several hundred voting precincts, at least several dozen. And so some of that data might not be as useful there. But I mean, we're happy to consider sort of having it as an overlay to be able to see. But I think it might be just as useful to know sort of which part of town you're interested in, and being able to pinpoint that a little more. You can, on the map, search for an address. I think in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little magnifying glass. And you can search for an address and get sort of go to where you are on the map. Because sometimes with these heat maps, especially if you're not used to them, and for me, I'm used to seeing a map of Houston all the time, and so even though I didn't grow up here, I feel like I know it really well. But if you're a little disoriented on the map, sort of typing an address can be really helpful to just get a sense of where you are.
Yeah,
in relation to something.
Would you be able to share your screen again and show people how to look that up?
Let me do that real quick.
Yeah, and then Ty, I don't know if you wanted to share anything else about just what David was saying about going into kind of narrowing it down into the precinct level.
Yeah, definitely. And I know there was another Q&A from Paula speaking on specifically the precinct 1 through 4. But to David's point, it's when we think about the data that's provided through the American Community Survey, it's a subsample. And there are two reasons why the lowest level we can really get at is the Puma level, where it's no less than 100,000 people are aggregated in a census designated area. The first reason is because we want to have the statistical power to make an accurate estimation based off of a subsample of people who participate in the American Community Survey every year. The second point is we have to be careful about digging down deeper to a certain geography, especially when thinking about people's security and safety, especially when we're looking at those who are eligible to naturalize, especially those in mixed status families. It's important to really think about what implications that might have if we're narrowing it down so far down that the estimation is not, we're not confident in the estimation itself, but also what it would mean to those who are potentially in this data set.
That's a great point. And I in terms of commissioner precincts, county commissioner precincts, which I misunderstood the question. We can definitely add those, and so I put that on a list of something to add, because I think that would provide, that'll split Harris County up into 4 big districts. And while we won't have the estimates for that specific commissioner precinct, you will be able to see sort of how it overlays with this Puma map and what that looks like. So I wanted to put here an address, and we can take a little look. Just for posterity, I'm going to put my own address here in Montrose, which will then allow me to see where I live, and also to see, you know, what the area that I'm living in here, as well as some of the information around roadways and various things. It'll give you a little bit more orientation as you zoom in.
Thank you, David. Okay, we have a few more questions in the chat. So Benjamin's bringing up a really great point that I think you started touching on, Ty, is, you know, this is a great tool, but have considered the possibility of bad actors using this data and map to do harm?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, Benjamin. And one of the things that we can do to start mitigating, let's say, harm, especially when it comes to the individual, is making sure that the data is aggregated to a certain level where it's, one, still useful, but two, still protect people's identity. We've so far at the Equity Research Institute have only heard positive stories of how this tool has been used as a way to facilitate easier pathways for those who are eligible to naturalize. And so in a lot of cases, it has helped a lot of people become citizens and allow them to vote and become more included in the political process. And so the tool itself, we want to focus on what it's really meant to do. It's really meant to help facilitate those towards citizenship, so that they do have that opportunity to participate. You know, however they vote or however they want to be involved as citizens, that's up to them. But the whole point is, when we think about opportunities to become citizens and making sure that there's fair and equitable representation, what this tool does is provide that pathway to those who are eligible to naturalize.
Great, thank you. And then Bindu had a question about undocumented people and how they fit into this 300,000 figure for the eligible to naturalize population. And I'm happy to start answering that, and Ty, if you want to add to that. So when we're talking about the eligible to naturalize in this mapping tool and the data that USC has provided, we are talking about people who would be eligible to naturalize today. So these are people who have been with their lawful permanent residency for the required, 5 years, and would actually be able to start the process for naturalization. So it does not count undocumented people or people who, have just gotten their green card. It really does count people who would be eligible to naturalize now. And Ty, yeah, you can add or clarify.
Yeah, just to add to Ghislaine's explanation. So yes, it doesn't include those who are likely undocumented. And at the Equity Research Institute, we use our own statistical model to determine those who are likely to be undocumented and present some statistical noise in the data set. And so those who are likely undocumented, they are removed just because they're systematically unable to naturalize in our current political landscape. Under our current laws as well. And so they are removed and not included in that estimate, just to make sure that those who are eligible to naturalize are truly eligible.
And then we have another question from Asia. Would it be possible to create an overlay boundary with the neighborhoods in addition to the current options?
So I think yes, we can. I just want to sort of underline, maybe Ty, you can speak to this too. So the overlays right now don't provide sort of an aggregated summary of that neighborhood or that county commissioner precinct. It'll just allow you to see sort of what areas are overlaying on top of the PUMAs, which are really the only areas that we're able to have those estimates of the eligible to naturalize population. So it can sort of give you, it can't give you how many eligible to naturalize are in this particular neighborhood or county commissioner precinct, but it can give you a better sense of, what the landscape looks like in that part of town. So I'd be happy, for instance, the Kinder Institute puts out some neighborhood data or neighborhood boundary data that we've added on other maps, and happy to put that on here as well.
Thanks, David. And we do have Terry has a question, and I'm gonna see if we can unmute her. Terry, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I didn't know. I must have accidentally raised the hand. I couldn't hear the speaker, so I had to put the phone really close to my ear. I was wondering, could I get a copy of this recording? I missed part of it in earlier, so I would like to get a copy if that's possible.
Sure, we can definitely, we'll have a link available. We'll send it out to this group and for those of you who, or those of your colleagues who weren't able to join us today. So we will have that link available.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Thanks, Terry. And then we have another question from AJ in the chat. In an area of interest, how can we contact or connect with those who are eligible to naturalize? And this is the $1 million question, AJ. I'll let Ty start with that one, and then I can add.
Yeah, there are a lot of different strategies. The one limitation for sure is with the data that we do have, we don't have direct contact information for a lot of good reasons, right? We don't want the direct contact information because to some of the points made earlier, that can present a lot of security and privacy issues. But what has been working at the more local level with a lot of community organizations we've worked with, at least here in California, is to really rely on those trusted partners in the communities. And when we think about trusted partners, they could be a multitude of different actors and stakeholders. It could be the local elementary school that you can connect with parents who are eligible to naturalize or maybe are on the way to become eligible to naturalize. It can be with local school districts. It can be with community organizations that work specifically with certain immigrant groups. So there are a lot of different stakeholders, and one that has been very prominent here in California, especially among certain immigrant groups, is religious institutions as well. So making sure that you have these partnerships, because these are the actors who are trusted by a lot of immigrant communities, is one way of connecting with those who are eligible to naturalize and making sure that they know what resources are out there. But that is one of the more effective way of really reaching those populations, especially the hard to reach populations.
Yeah, and just to add to what Ty was saying, I mean, I know a lot of the organizations on this call today are already doing that work on the ground to try to reach as many people who are eligible to naturalize and share this information, through your community outreach, through using community navigators. We've been really grateful to Ethnic Media Services and the Houston Ethnic Media Roundtable that has started to really promote the citizenship initiative and let people know about the citizenship services that are out there. So I think, there's a variety of different ways that we're looking at how we can expand community research, community outreach, in terms of either through nonprofit organizations or the media. And like Ty mentioned, there have been in other cities, public entities that have been involved in actually directly contacting some people. So for example, in a couple other communities, they've been able to work with the local health and human services departments, where the health and human services departments have actually sent out information to people who are enrolled in public benefits to let them know, if they think that they are eligible to naturalize. They've actually sent out, mailers directly to those households to let them know about the citizenship resources that are out there. And so, we are looking at ways that other cities have done this and other regions have done this. And so I think there are some opportunities out there. But like Ty said, we just need to be careful about, respecting people's privacy and really respecting those safety concerns that some people have. But yeah, we are happy to, hear your ideas. Anybody on this call, if you have ideas of how we can reach all of those who are eligible to naturalize, we're happy to be in conversation with you about that. Any other questions? Oh, we did actually have a question from one of our attendees in South Texas College of Law who is not able to access the website. So we may need to reach out to you individually about that to make sure you can access it. Any other questions that we have not answered yet? And Toy asked about whether there's a way for this to be done by zip code, I think with the boundaries. And I think again, Toy, that right now the kind of narrowest level is that Puma level, and so we'd not be able to go down by zip code at this point. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I'll just, since we do have a couple more minutes, if there's any kind of last final words, from Ty and David in terms of the data or how you hope that people use the dashboard, I'll let you have these final minutes. So I'll turn it over to you first, Ty.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited for this dashboard to be made available to the public and community partners. I think this is going to be an amazing resource for the greater Houston area. One of the things I really enjoy about this map is that, it's layered with the resources. And so a lot of community organizations are able to really understand, if we're seeing, for example, certain areas that have high concentration of those with low English proficiency, but the closest English learning resource is, miles and miles away. That is an indication that, maybe we need to consider strategies of getting English learning resources closer to those areas. So I'm very excited to see that. And, I know that this dashboard is going to continue to evolve with the support of Houston Endowment and David's and his team's work. So I'm excited to see where this is going to go as well.
Thanks,
I think that's well said, and we're happy to be involved. And if you guys have any feedback, feel free to reach out to me, or just Lane in the endowment, and we can sort of figure out what the next steps are with that. And so I've already written down some of the things y'all mentioned today, but if you have anything else when you're exploring the map on your own, happy to consider it and include it if we can.
Thanks, David. And yeah, please do send us your questions. We have our contact information in the chat. Please feel free to email me if you have any ideas or questions, especially as you start to look through the tool. We want this to be useful for the community. We want this to help you in your local efforts. And so we want to hear from you and want to make sure that this map is accessible and useful to the community. So thank you to Ty and David for being able to, do this overview with us today, and also for all of your work to create these really amazing resources for the community here in Houston and across the country. So thank you all, and please do take a look at the dashboard and let us know if you have any questions. And thank you for joining us.